Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. As you've seen, I did a video how right-wing politicians make certain comments in public that radicalizes and incites violence, where white supremacists take matters into their own hands and go out and start shooting and killing random people, as we saw in New Zealand. So Darren Hinch actually faced Pauline Hanson, who is by far an inspiration for these white supremacists. So let's go see the debate with Darren Hinch, just a small dialogue, versus Pauline Hanson. And what I'll do is I'll review it and give my counter response to better effectively respond to Pauline Hanson. Let's have a listen.
Pauline, this terrorist manifesto almost reads like one nation, immigration and Muslim policy. Do you in any way feel complicit with this atrocity?
Explain that one to me.
Well, the anti-Muslim rhetoric that you espouse constantly here, that you did in your maiden speech when you came to Parliament in 2016. Do you understand?
David, I feel for these people. I feel for those families that lost their lives. The same as just across the road from here. You had the Lint Cafe massacre that happened, the terrorist attacks, the 14 that have been foiled, the ones that have been carried out in the country, and the 14 that have been foiled. We have problems, but you've actually got to discuss it and debate the issues. Why we have these terrorist attacks in this country? Why is it happening around the world? Why is it happening, in many places?
But most of the terrorist attacks are right-wing white supremacists that live in fear, that are rigged on, that are rigged on by your comments, anti-Muslim comments saying they don't deserve to be here, rubbish. That they will take over this country.
That is a load of rubbish, David.
In your maiden speech.
And that isn't a load of rubbish. Let's have a look at some of the atrocities that have taken place in the world. It's funny because they try and defend the New Zealand terrorist. Notice Pauline Hanson was basically saying, oh, look, she feels sorry for what had happened, but then she actually defends the New Zealand terrorist to say, oh, look at what's happening around the world. Look at all the terrorism and stuff like that. She's basically trying to blame Islam for why the white supremacists act the way they do. But notice when we have a look at the white supremacist crimes around the world, the Christchurch Mosque was obviously done by a white supremacist, but then you have a look at the Tree of Life Synagogue against the Jews, which was also done by a white supremacist, nothing to do with Islam. Mother Emmanuel AME Church, which is a Christian church, was also done by a white supremacist. The Oak, which has, again, nothing to do with Islam. The Oak Creek Sikh Temple, again, nothing to do with Islam, was done by a white supremacist. The Overland Park Jewish Center, again, was done by a white supremacist. Again, nothing to do with Islam. The Islamic Center of Quebec City was again done by a white supremacist, which had something to do with Islam. So notice we're seeing a pattern that the white supremacists are not just attacking Islamic organizations, they're attacking black Christian churches that are non-white, they're attacking Jewish holy places, and they're even attacking Sikh holy places that aren't Muslim. So much for Pauline Hanson trying to again tarnish Islam to say, oh, look, it's Islam's fault. Notice she's defending the victim every time. And we see this pattern happen all the time with right-wing politicians. And this is why we say they should be banned. Instead of condemning the perpetrator, they voice out for a political gain to use immigration as an issue, to use excuses such as Islam as a terrorist religion as an excuse. And I'm not saying that white supremacists don't do what they are doing because they're seeing Islam as a threat. That is one of the factors, I agree. But that isn't the only factor of why they do things. They basically want total global domination, regardless what faith you come from.
Sorry, what are you saying? What are you saying the most?
That are regged on by your comments, anti-Muslim comments, saying they don't deserve to be here, that they will take over this country.
That is a load of rubbish, David.
In your maiden speech, you said we will be living under Sharia law and treated as second-class citizens with second-class rights if we keep heading down this path. Can you understand how that empowers a white supremacist like this terrorist in New Zealand, who is Australian,
David,
into seeing it as a call to arms?
David, have a look at what has happened in England, and I speak to people that are leaving England now to come out here because they've lost their country. England is not the country that they grew up in. Either is Sweden.
Really,
women cannot walk down the streets in Sweden. In France, the same thing.
That is just tripe.
It is not tripe. It is not tripe, David, and you must know what's happening there. Learn from mistakes that it's happening in other countries to ensure that it doesn't happen here. I didn't grow up with terrorism.
See, folks, notice she's constantly defending the white supremacist actions. Look, if a white supremacist took the matter in his own hands, why? Because it's justifiable, apparently, to Pauline Hanson, because look what's happened in London. Look what the Muslims have done there. Come on, seriously. Did really the Muslims take over London? The whites are still in control of London and United Kingdom. Just because there's a London mayor who is a Muslim, it doesn't necessarily mean the Muslims have taken over London. And Koshiu is right. This is what they do. This is the alienation that the white Australian policy does from Pauline Hanson. They alienate Muslims. They make people hate Islam. They put all this fear out there. And then when a person does a crime against Muslims, they say, oh, look, it's Islam's fault.
The streets in this country, people weren't being murdered. Why has it changed now?
We had Hilton bombings. We had IRAs. You make such bold claims. It's that every Muslim is terrible. Every Muslim is a threat because they don't look like us and they don't have our religion. It's like saying something stupid like every Catholic priest is a pedophile, which is a stupid thing to say. But it's the same logic as you.
It is not. I have called for people to stand up beside me, the Muslims, and the terrorist attacks that have happened in this country, because I've asked them to stand beside me to find the answers to all this that's happening. We've actually endorsed a Muslim. She's not a practicing Muslim, but she is still Muslim, and she doesn't want to see the problems that are happening here in this country. Go out to Fairfield and out to these other areas. Go and ask.
Again, Pauline Hanson justifying, oh, look at all these terrorist attacks. And, many Islamophobes start posting statistics like, oh, there have been 34,725 Islamic terrorist attacks since September 2001. But interestingly, what they actually don't note in that record is that it was since 9/11/2001. In other words, radical Muslim terrorist attacks were almost non-existent before the invasion of foreign countries by Western empires. If there was no invasion by the West, we would hardly even get those figures. And again, I'm not making justifications like Pauline Hanson for the acts of terror. I'm just trying to put perspective that the reason why certain statistics exist is because A and B exist. However, in doing so, I would never, ever justify the actions of what ISIS is doing, killing men, women and children, and what Boko Haram is doing, or whatever terrorist group out there is doing. I would never, ever justify what they're doing, and I would never, ever say, well, you know what? They deserve it, just as some right-wing commentators do actually say. And I'll put a hyperlink below this and you can see it for yourself. So many Westerners are actually justifying it, saying it's an eye for an eye. Unbelievable. And Pauline Hanson clearly feels guilty because the manifesto that she has shown from the actual New Zealand criminal is the same rhetorics very similar rhetorics to what Pauline Hanson says, and she can't fathom that. The fact that she calls out for a ban on Muslims, on Muslim immigration, she calls on bans on new mosque developments, she tries to put a ban on, Muslims growing as a faith in this country, saying ban Islam. And so that is the same rhetoric that radicalizes these people. Can you imagine, folks, if an imam in Australia said, we need to ban, bikinis in this country. We need to ban the Bible in this country. We need to, stop Christian churches from developing their churches. We need to stop this. We need to campaign for this. And then, if a Muslim goes out and commits an act of terror against a Christian church for developing after his own imam has said don't develop, then I'm pretty sure Pauline Hanson would go after that imam and say, it was you who inspired the youth in this country. It is you that needs to step down, because they are listening to people like you, and you are the one that is radicalizing the youth. So you need to now stand down and be held responsible for what you were condoning to the youth of this country. So why is it any different that Pauline Hanson is a spokesperson for all of these white people, and that these white people listen to what Pauline Hanson has to say, and they would act upon what Pauline Hanson says? So when Pauline Hanson says we should ban mosques, of course a white person could get radicalized by this and go out and commit acts of heinous crimes. So yes, Pauline Hanson should be held responsible for the message she starts putting forward. Just as we would hold an imam responsible for saying ban Christian churches in Australia. And if something happened, we would blame the imam, wouldn't we?
It is not tripe, David, and you must know what's happening there. Learn from mistakes that it's happening in other countries and ensure that it doesn't happen here. I didn't grow up with terrorism on the streets in this country. People weren't being murdered. Why has it changed now?
We had Hilton bombings, we had IRAs. You make such bold claims. It's that every Muslim is terrible. Every Muslim is a threat because they don't look like us and they don't have our religion. It's like saying something stupid like every Catholic priest is a pedophile, which is a stupid thing to say. But it's the same logic as you.
It is not. I have called for people to stand up beside me, the Muslims, and the terrorist attacks that have happened in this country, because I've asked them to stand beside me to find the answers to all this that's happening. We've actually endorsed a Muslim. She's not a practicing Muslim, but she is still Muslim, and she doesn't want to see the problems that are happening here in this country. Go out to...
Okay, I have to really laugh on this one. Now, notice what Pauline Hanson says here. She says, now, this is the lady that Pauline Hanson has referenced, Emma Eros. She actually claims she was a Muslim. She still claims she was a Muslim. And she actually joins Pauline Hanson's party. But surprisingly, Pauline Hanson uses her as a credibility, but then she says, well, she's not even a practicing Muslim. And notice also, she references basically a fake Muslim. She only employed a fake Muslim so as to score a political gain. Even Pauline Hanson's supporters were shaking their heads for employing such a person. Emma Eros doesn't even believe in Sharia law. Yet, according to Pauline Hanson, only one who accepts Sharia law is a true Muslim and a true representation of what it is to be a Muslim. So why get a fake Islamic representation in order to justify that a Muslim is in agreement with you for your cause? In fact, if Emma doesn't believe in the principles of terrorist groups like ISIS, such as beheading infidels, throwing gay people off rooftops and flogging fornicators, then Emma, according to Miss Hanson, is a taqiyya-loving Muslim that denies true Islam, therefore a fake Muslim. The only way Pauline Hanson can legitimately reference a Muslim that agrees with Pauline Hanson's cause is if that specific Muslim also believes in the fundamental teachings of Islam. And then, despite all of that, agrees with Miss Hanson also. In other words, Emma must hold a position that Sharia law is true form of Islam. She must then also believe Sharia law is no good for the West and the system that oppresses the West. However, Emma doesn't believe Sharia law, period. Nor does Emma believe Sharia law has any legitimacy in Islam, be it for Muslims or non-Muslims. So how then can Pauline Hanson reference Emma as a true Muslim and a legitimate Muslim that agrees with Miss Hanson? You can't expect to preach that a Muslim is in agreement with you when that Muslim does not even believe Sharia law has any place in today's world. This Hanson is unbelievable and very hypocritical. She will label Emma's kind, a moderate Muslim, as being the fake representation of Islam. But then, to win a political gain that she's not anti-Muslim, she will employ those types of fake Muslims in order to prove she's not anti-Muslim. And that there are Muslims that agree with her in order to deflect the idea that she's not anti-Muslim. And to prove that whatever she says about Islam has to be true, because right next to me, I have presented a phony Muslim that agrees with me. It's no different from getting a biased ex-Muslim to agree with you that what you're saying must be true because an ex-Muslim agrees with you. So it's absolutely hilarious she referenced a Muslim when Pauline Hanson doesn't even really believe she's a true Muslim.
And she doesn't want to see the problems that are happening here in this country. Go out to Fairfield and out to these other areas. Go and ask the Lebanese Christians what's happened to their country. They'll tell you exactly, and they're in fear of the same thing happening here. You might laugh about it.
Notice Pauline Hanson again is demonizing Muslims. She's saying, look at what's happening in Sydney, how the Muslims over there are treating their non-Muslims. So what is Pauline Hanson doing? Notice she's again inciting violence. What is she trying to do? Radicalize the people, the bogans in Sydney, so they can now go out and kill Muslims? So this is not freedom of speech, folks. This is propagating hatred, animosity, and a war against Muslims. And don't you ever think this is freedom of speech. Just imagine I said, you know what, don't allow any white nationalists to go live in New Zealand anymore. You know, because if they go to New Zealand, they might commit such atrocities and abhorrent crimes. And can you imagine if I told the New Zealanders, look, don't accept white people here, because if you accept white people in New Zealand, they'll start committing all of these crimes. So you better be aware of them. And can you imagine the white people would say, Mustafa, you're inciting violence, you're inciting hatred and racism of the white people. Why are you saying that to the New Zealanders? Are you trying to get New Zealanders to bash and rape white Westerners? And let's go tell then the New Zealanders, Miss Pauline Hanson, let's tell them one of your own migrated to Christchurch, New Zealand, committing one of the most abhorrent terrorist attacks where the death toll has climbed to 49 people, some say 15 now, marking the darkest day in the history of New Zealand. Let's now go ask those people what and how the white person has tarnished the reputation of New Zealand. So should we play your game now, Miss Pauline?
If you're abstaining, Pauline, it shows you approve of what he says.
I've had everyone stand up against me too. The people will judge me as the people will judge Fraser Anning. I don't support what happened in New Zealand. I feel for those people that lost their lives, and it should never happen. But let's start the discussion.
If you really feel sorry for those lives, Pauline Hanson, why didn't you fly over to New Zealand and lay some flowers in front of that mosque and visit those people in the hospital and really show your true implication of remorse of those people. You know, it's very easy saying you condemn this and you feel sorry. Why don't you even show it with your actions? Now, that wouldn't look too good if Pauline Hanson started laying flowers in front of a mosque, would it? So don't believe these people when they actually feel remorseful about what has happened. I can assure you that these people feel happy and excited that Islam faced a brutal consequence on that day, with its worshippers butchered like cattle animals.
I do not believe in the fundamentalist ideology of Islam. I do not believe in Sharia law. I don't believe it has a place in Australia.
I don't believe in
Well, Muslims aren't campaigning in a political system unlike One Nation. Do you see a Muslim political party trying to be elected in the Australian Constitution Electoral Commission? No. So why is she saying, I don't want to see Sharia law in this country? There is none of the things that she's talking about exist in this country that is controversial against the Australian Constitution.
And a lot of people don't believe that. I don't believe in the suppression of women. I don't believe in mutilation.
There is no suppression of women in Islam within this Constitution of Australia.
Of children's genitals. These are problems. If we do not act...
Children's genitals are actually against Islam. Cutting their genitals is against Islam. And there is no Muslim here who is actually proposing in the Electoral Commission to say that we need to cut women's genitals. If anything has happened, it possibly has happened underground, and there is no case that suggests that an imam is going out there and advocating to cut women's genitals in this country. In fact, watch my video below that Islam is against female genital mutilation. But you see, these are all the smoke screens. You know, she's lost her arguments. She's lost her battles. We've shown a clear similarity between her theology and the theology of these white racist nationals who committed these crimes in New Zealand, and she can't fathom that. Thank you.